My husband left me on the highway when my amniotic fluid broke and rushed to celebrate his ex-girlfriend's birthday. Since then, I completely disappeared. He made a bet with his friends, she will definitely come back obediently within 3 days. 10 days later, he froze all my bank cards and sent a message threatening. Roll back immediately. Don't be ungrateful. 100 days later, he rushed to my best friend's house and forced her to hand me over. My best friend directly shoved the photos of the car accident scene in front of him. Come to your senses. Your wife is already dead. You were the one who claimed the body. Have you forgotten? 8 months and 9 days into my pregnancy, Lucas took me for a prenatal checkup. But on the highway, he received a phone call. Lucas. I'm back in the country. The speakerphone was on, and I immediately recognized that it was Vivian's voice. I looked at Lucas nervously, and sure enough, his face changed instantly. He became nervous, excited, and expectant. Today is my birthday. Can you come and keep me company? I'll be waiting for you at the usual place. Okay, I'm on my way. After the call ended, my heart sank to the bottom. Don't go. I sat in the passenger seat and begged him through my tears, Lucas, you promised me. You said you would forget her. Lucas looked extremely impatient. I'm just going to celebrate her birthday. What are you crying for? Perhaps sensing my extreme negative emotions, the baby in my belly kicked me. I gasped in pain immediately, my stomach hurts. Lucas glanced at me disapprovingly, stop pretending, I really hurt. Lucas thought I was faking it and became even more impatient. Regardless of the danger, he stepped on the brake, get out. I couldn't believe it. As if I was really getting to know him for the first time. Evelyn, get out. Don't make me say it a third time. His face was extremely cold, and he used a commanding tone. Since I was a child, whenever he spoke to me in this tone, I knew I had to listen to him. Otherwise, the consequences would be too terrible for me to bear. I got out of the car. My pants were soaked. My amniotic fluid had broken. He stepped on the gas and drove away, rushing to celebrate his ex-girlfriend's birthday. He didn't even look back at me, a pregnant woman in the middle of the busy traffic, looking miserable and helpless. Only at that moment did I finally give up completely. It turned out that Lucas really didn't love me. I'm so stupid, so foolish, so mean to myself. I actually only just admitted the reality. When I was a child, Lucas once gave me a piece of candy. That was the first time I had eaten such a delicious candy in my memory. But now that I think about it, it was just a whim of his charity. In his eyes, I was no different from a stray dog on the street. I was originally an illegitimate child. My father didn't love me, my mother didn't want me, and even my grandparents who raised me didn't like me very much. They gave me food to eat, but they always called me a little bastard and blamed me for ruining my mother's life. No one loved me. It was Lucas who gave me the illusion of being loved. He once pulled me out of the quagmire and wouldn't allow any child to bully me. He also used his pocket money to buy me beautiful little dresses, took me to eat fried chicken and hamburgers. Even the first piece of spicy strips in my life was shared with me by Lucas. Because of this, I was willing to follow him and be his little tail and little follower for 20 years. Originally, he treated me quite well. Just like how he treated his group of brothers who hung out with him, he never mistreated anyone. Until one night 8 months ago, Lucas and Vivian broke up. He was drunk. He kissed me, and he slept with me. The next day, he left without saying a word. I pretended nothing had happened and continued to be his little tail. But a month later, I found out that I was pregnant. With a certain inexplicable and nervous mood, I told Lucas about this. My heart seemed to be split in two. On the one hand, I pessimistically thought that Lucas would definitely ask me to abort the child. On the other hand, I secretly hoped that Lucas would allow me to keep the child. Lucas was silent for a few seconds and then said, "Let's get married." I was stunned at that time and burst into tears of joy. I hugged him and cried so hard that my makeup was all smeared. He held my face with a mix of annoyance and amusement, wiped my tears while complaining, "You look so ugly when you cry. Like a little stray dog on the street." I wrapped my arms around his neck and buried my face in his chest. He laughed, and his chest vibrated. "Are you really that happy to marry me?" "Happy, extremely happy. I've never been this happy in my life." I stood on tiptoe and kissed him. He didn't dodge and looked at me with affection. At that moment, I really thought that he loved me too. But reality isn't a romantic drama, and the slaps in the face always come quickly. There was no wedding, no honeymoon, and not even the blessings of our parents. Lucas and I got the marriage certificate, and that was it for our marriage. After marriage, I found that life wasn't as happy as I had imagined. Lucas had never really let go of Vivian. He would always stare blankly at the photos or videos of Vivian on his phone. Occasionally, when Vivian posted a WeChat moments, he could look at it over and over again for several days. I saw all of this, and he didn't even try to hide it. Finally, we started arguing again and again. Lucas had always been pampered by me, and he had no intention of giving in to me at all. The last time he even tore off the mask completely and taunted me, "Come on, is it interesting for you to act like this? Don't you think you can control me just because you got a marriage certificate with me? You've been following me for so many years. You know more about my relationship with Vivian than anyone else. Yes, I just love her. I can't forget her. So what?" At that moment, I felt as if my heart had been stabbed through, and the pain made it hard for me to breathe. Yes, no one knew better than me how much Lucas loved Vivian. Lucas was the heir of the Lucas family. He had been the school bully and top student since he was a child. And as an adult, he was a powerful figure in the circle. He was so proud and dazzling, and he never bowed his head to anyone. But in his freshman year of college, he fell in love with Vivian at first sight and was willing to break all his bottom lines for her. Once, one of Lucas's sworn enemies kidnapped Vivian and forced Lucas to kneel. Lucas knelt down without the slightest hesitation. I was there at that time. I secretly hid in the corner and called the police. When the police arrived, Lucas was already covered in blood and in a sorry state, but Vivian was protected under him and wasn't hurt at all. Thinking of the things he had done for Vivian over the years, the things that made me envious, jealous, and too inferior to even dare to think about, my sobs were even trembling. "Since you love her so much, why did you marry me? If you hadn't gotten pregnant without permission, do you think I would have married you?" He sneered and completely crushed my dignity. After saying this, he slammed the door and left. I don't know how long it took me to catch my breath. And then I left that home in a daze. I didn't take any luggage or my phone. I was like a lost little dog, wandering on an unknown street. It rained, and I didn't take shelter. Because I didn't know what the point of taking shelter was. I also didn't know what the meaning of living was. Before I knew it, I came to the bridge by the river. I fell in. The icy cold water instantly filled my lungs. I struggled instinctively. But then I quickly gave up struggling. Just die like this. It's not so bad. Unfortunately, things didn't go as I wished. I didn't die. When I opened my eyes, Lucas was sitting by my hospital bed. He looked pale and haggard, with red bloodshot eyes, messy hair, and an unshaven beard. When he saw me open my eyes, he quickly grabbed my hand. "Evelyn, you're finally awake?" It was obvious that he was really happy at that moment, as if he had a sense of joy at having regained something lost. I wanted to speak, but my throat was so dry and painful. He quickly gave me some water and then apologized in a rush by the bedside. "Evelyn, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those words to hurt your feelings, and I shouldn't have left you alone. I won't do it again in the future. Don't do anything stupid. For the sake of the baby, forgive me." I looked down at my 6-month pregnant belly, which was still bulging. It seemed that the baby was okay. "Lucas, let's get a divorce." He was stunned, seemingly completely taken aback by what I said. "Don't talk nonsense, and don't be angry with me. Go find Vivian. Don't mention her again," he suddenly raised his voice. We won't mention her from now on. I closed my eyes and tried my best to hold back my tears, but the tears still betrayed me and wet my eyelashes. He gently wiped away my tears. Little crybaby, you clearly love me to death but still dare to mention divorce. If we really get divorced, will you jump into the river again? Leave me alone. Who else will take care of you if I don't? I've been taking care of you since you were a child. I stopped arguing with him. But he seemed like a different person. He started bussying himself around, taking care of me and showing concern for the baby in my belly. My cold heart was gradually warmed up. I thought that maybe he was really scared. And after this incident, perhaps he realized that he loved me too. Until I accidentally overheard him talking on the phone with a friend. He was smoking a cigarette and said to the other end, I've already coaxed her. Don't worry, everything's fine. I didn't know what was said on the other end. He cursed with a laugh and then said in a casual tone, even if it's a dog, after raising it for 20 years, there will be some affection. What's more, Evelyn is more loyal to me than a dog. She loves me and can't live without me at all. I stood there stiffly behind the door, my hands and feet turning cold. He extinguished the cigarette but hung up the phone, and when he looked up and saw me, he froze too. This time, I didn't make a scene. I just silently turned around and went back to the bedroom. After a while, he came in too. He hugged me from behind and said in an extremely gentle voice next to my ear, Evelyn, I love you. This was the first time I heard these 3 words from him. But I couldn't tell whether they were true or false anymore. Don't think too much. I promise you that I'll treat you well from now on. Aren't you just bothered about Vivian? I promise you that I won't think about her anymore. From now on, there will only be Evelyn in my life, okay? I really wished I had the courage to push him away, but after thinking for a long time, all I could hear was myself saying humbly, okay. Lucas smiled in satisfaction. We made up. Now that I think about it, everything was an illusion. I was just too greedy and too weak, not even having the courage to face the reality. After that, Lucas went on a business trip, and he was away for 2 months. Every week, he would make a video call to me to confirm that I and the baby in my belly were safe, and then he would go back to his business. I could clearly feel that he was becoming cold towards me again. He had always been like this. Since we were children, whenever he made me cry, he would patiently coax me for a while. Once he had coaxed me well, he would show his true colors again and continue to be cold and mean. But my life was so barren. No one loved me, and no one helped me. The sweetness that Lucas gave me, although mixed with arsenic, was the only sweetness in my life. He was the person who understood me the best in the world. So he felt confident and fearless. 2 months later, Lucas came back. It happened to be the time for my prenatal checkup, and he drove me to the hospital. And then the scene at the beginning happened. I don't know what Lucas was feeling when he kicked me out of the car. Maybe he really wanted to see Vivian quickly. Maybe he thought that I would be like before. Even if he abandoned me, I would still obediently find my way back and then continue to stick by his side. But no matter what he thought, this time, I really couldn't go back anymore. I was slapped in the face again. Because when I regained consciousness, I was already back with Lucas. But he seemed unable to see me. I looked at his watch. It had been 48 hours since he left me on the highway. Even though I didn't want to, my consciousness still involuntarily followed Lucas. What on earth was going on? At this moment Lucas had just parked the car and, as usual, went to the nightclub where he and his friends often gathered. Unlike before, and what always been the center of attention, didn't receive a warm welcome this time. Even everyone present had different expressions. They secretly communicated with each other with their eyes, but no one took the initiative to speak. What's wrong with all of you? You seem surprised to see me? As he spoke, he sat down and poured himself a glass of wine. One of his closest friends, named Julian, broke the awkwardness. No bro, why are you here? Your wife. She don't worry. She'll definitely come back obediently within 3 days. He still had that casual tone, which sounded really annoying. In the past, his cronies would have flattered him at this moment, saying that he was a real man, that he was lucky, and that he was good at handling his wife. And Lucas also enjoyed that kind of flattery, whether it was sincere or fake. But this time, everyone was eerily silent. Even two girls turned pale with fright. Lucas was confused. Don't believe me? How about we make a bet? Julian looked at him with a shocked and sympathetic gaze. We believe. Believe my ass. One of the girls couldn't stand it anymore and directly splashed a glass of wine on Lucas's head. Get out, go find your Vivian. You're not welcome here. I feel sick just looking at a scumbag like you. Lucas had never been humiliated like this since he was born. Several men simultaneously stood in front of the girl, afraid that Lucas would do something to her. But strangely, the hot-tempered Lucas seemed to be stunned by the glass of wine. He didn't say anything, stood up, and staggered away. In the end, he only left a sentence: she will definitely come back within 3 days. She's never left me. She doesn't dare to. My consciousness followed Lucas back home. From that day on, Lucas never went to see his friends again. He didn't go to the company, and he didn't go to find Vivian either. He only did 2 things every day: drink alcohol, and then call and send messages to me. Evelyn, where the hell have you gone? Get back here right now. Evelyn, you actually dare to not answer my phone? Have you grown some guts? Evelyn, if you don't come back, I'll throw away all those crappy flowers you planted. He could send me hundreds of such messages a day, but without exception, they all disappeared without a reply. Lucas didn't give up and still believed that I was just angry with him. He kept causing damage at home. He not only threw away my flowers but also demolished the baby room I had carefully prepared. He tore all the baby clothes and toys I had carefully prepared into shreds. Every time he damaged something, he would take a photo and send it to me, as if this could make me feel heartbroken and make me come home quickly. But it was useless. Even if he turned the house into a ruin, I never gave him the slightest response. On the 10th day of my disappearance, he, who was drunk, seemed to come up with a new idea. He froze all my bank cards. Evelyn, if you want money, get back here. You're spending my money and fooling around outside. Is this how you act as a wife? But there was still no response. Until the 100th day of my disappearance, he suddenly became calm and then went to find Vivian again. Vivian seemed very happy to see him, but seeing his drunk appearance, she also showed great concern. She took him to a beauty salon. First, they soaked in a hot spring, and then he had his hair cut and his face shaved. She took good care of him from head to toe, and then she nodded in satisfaction. Lucas let her fiddle with him numbly throughout the process, not saying a word. He just kept taking photos and posting them on Moments. In just one day, he took Vivian to buy jewelry, diamond rings, a house, a car, clothes, and bags. His moments were filled with messages showing their affection, with more than 100 of them in total. He had a wide circle of friends, so naturally, he received a lot of comments and likes. One of the comments was particularly eye-catching: wish you a long-lasting relationship, scumbag and scumbag girl. Please stay together forever. The person who left the comment was my only best friend in this life, Ava. I understand that Lucas posted these updates on Moments to provoke me, make me jealous, and then hurry back to his side to assert my sovereignty. He used to do this often, and every time I would act as he wished. But this time was different. Ava's comment seemed to have reminded him. He was stunned for a moment, then left Vivian, who was stilled with joy, and stormed over to Ava's house. Ava, you've hidden Evelyn, haven't you? Ava, open the door for me. He banged on the door, as if he wanted to tear it down. Ava suddenly pulled the door open. Lucas, what are you going crazy for? Hand over Evelyn, otherwise, I'll tear down your house. Lucas barged in obsessively, searching room by room. Ava was so furious with him that she dashed forward, grabbed his collar, and thrust her phone right in front of his face. On the phone screen was a harrowing, blood-soaked, yet very clear photo of a car accident scene. In the photo, a pregnant woman was lying in a pool of blood in an extremely strange posture. Blood was flowing from her nose and mouth, and her hands and feet should have been broken in the impact. Under her highly swollen belly, there was nothing but blood. One could imagine how much pain she had endured before her death. In her dilated pupils, there seemed to be still traces of despair and wretchedness that hadn't dissipated. My spiritual body shuddered, and then I suddenly realized that that woman was me. I was hit by a large truck driven by a fatigued driver and was killed on the spot, resulting in the death of both me and the baby. Lucas seemed to be struck by lightning. He didn't move, and even his breathing seemed to stop. He stared fixedly at the photo of the car accident scene, and his eyes gradually turned scarlet. Come to your senses. Your wife is already dead. You were the one who claimed her body. Have you forgotten? Ava sneered at him. You left her on the highway. Have you forgotten? You were in such a hurry to celebrate Vivian's birthday that you couldn't wait for even a minute. Even though her amniotic fluid had broken and she was about to give birth, you still kicked her out of the car. Lucas's hand holding the phone trembled uncontrollably, and he couldn't help but kneel on the ground. I didn't know. I didn't know her amniotic fluid had broken. She said her stomach hurt, but I thought. Ava scoffed coldly. You thought she was just playing tricks and throwing a tantrum. In your heart, she was nothing more than a dog you kept, and the child she was carrying was just a puppy. The loves of both mother and child combined were not worth a single hair of Vivian's. Shut up, that's not true. That's not true. Lucas pounded his fist heavily on the ground. As if he couldn't bear it anymore, he began to cry loudly. In all these years, this was the first time I had seen Lucas cry. It was as if he had shed all his armor and regressed to a childlike state. Ava looked down at him. General Manager Lucas. Are you here to my house to perform being heartbroken? Sorry, I have no interest in being your audience. Lucas was crying so obsessively that he completely ignored what Ava was saying. Ava simply took out her phone and posted a video of him kneeling on the ground and wailing loudly on moments. She also added a caption, "The most entertaining person of the year." There was a significant overlap in the moments of Ava, me and Lucas. Many people were well aware of the issues between Lucas and me, as well as the news and cause of my death. Many people who had disliked Lucas before began to leave comments and give likes one after another. Could this be what is called a wild donkey farting? That's nonsense. General Manager Lucas clearly only cares now that the child is dead. His child really is dead. It was about to be born, but was killed by the father himself. It was a case of 2 lives lost. Such a scumbag man should be sent for sectioning to see if there's some genetic mutation or something. Otherwise, how could he have done such a despicable thing? It's because schoolbelle Vivian has great charm. Look how she's hooked General Manager Lucas. He just left his wife and child on the highway. I guess General Manager Lucas thought the highway was owned by his family. Even if he left them on the highway, no car would dare to hit them. Is this murder? The police should hold the scumbag man and the heartless woman accountable. It's possible that Lucas and Vivian conspired and used the car to kill. It should be thoroughly investigated to see if Lucas had bought any large insurance policies for Evelyn before. People always love to watch the excitement and don't mind if things get big. Many people on moments Vivian asking her to come out and say something and give an explanation. Vivian came from a middle-class family. She was not only beautiful but also smart. She had been adored by others since she was a child and had never been ridiculed by so many people at once. Of course, she couldn't accept it, but she was a smart person and wouldn't let herself fall into the trap of self-exoneration. Perhaps in her eyes, she was the only true love of Lucas, and I was just a little thing for Lucas to amuse himself with. She thought that the taunts and curses from these people were all because they didn't know the truth. So she made a decision that she would regret for the rest of her life. She put together a video that included various photos of her and Lucas and their sweet vlogs. It recorded all the expensive gifts that Lucas had given her and the luxurious beautiful scenes he had taken her to see. Every time she was sick, Lucas would stay by her side. Under the fireworks, Lucas made a deep vow of loving her for 10,000 years. She posted this video on various platforms, bought traffic, and hired internet trolls. In an instant, the video became a hot topic on the trending list. Her Weibo account gained 800,000 followers in a day. All of them were CP fans of her and Lucas. After all, popular tags such as handsome guy, beautiful girl, rich second generation, showing affection, and the pure love warrior were all included. When she saw that the popularity was high enough, Vivian posted a long essay of 8,000 words. In the essay, she not only wrote about the whole process of how she and Lucas met, fell in love, had misunderstandings, and broke up, but she also focused on writing about me. In her description, I became a shameless third party, a sycophant, a gold digger who dreamed of getting close to Lucas. She focused on describing my background. My mother was a third party, and I was an illegitimate child. I had a corrupt character and was amazingly good at playing me innocent acts since I was a child, but I wasn't smart enough and was always seen through by those around me. She said that I lacked love because I wasn't worthy of being loved by anyone. She also said that the reason she and Lucas broke up was because of me. She asked Lucas to completely break up with me. But I used all kinds of scheming and innocent acts to stick to Lucas, which was the direct cause of their breakup. Later, I took advantage of Lucas being drunk and climbed into his bed. I also deliberately got pregnant to force him into marriage. Lucas had no choice but to marry me. But after marriage, I made all kinds of unreasonable demands, and did all kinds of stupid things, making Lucas extremely annoyed with me. Finally, I had an argument with Lucas on the highway and jumped out of the car regardless of the danger. It was my own fault that I was hit and killed by a car. It was my own fault that both me and the baby died. Lucas was thus in great pain. But my friends carried out online violence against her and Lucas. She used a lot of rhetorical devices, took things out of context as examples, and restored a truth that was most favorable to her with a mixture of 3 parts truth and 7 parts falsehood. In the end, she successfully portrayed me as a vicious supporting female character who brought about her own destruction and harmed both others and herself. And she and Lucas were the lovers who had gone through many hardships and finally got back together. Of course, the most important thing was that she and Lucas were suffering from online violence because of me. She felt very wronged and unjustly accused, and was now severely depressed. Many fans who didn't know the truth were deceived and all stood on her side to speak for her. Looking at the comments full of praises, sympathies, and envies for her, she felt elated. Looking at the comments that belittled me, insulted me, and attacked me, she felt extremely pleased. The popularity of this matter grew higher and higher, and it stayed on the trending lists of various platforms for 3 consecutive days. Then her nightmare truly began. She still hadn't realized that she had provoked the wrong person. The people who had cursed Lucas and her on moments could be divided into 2 types. The first type were Lucas's rivals and had feuds with him. Those who could be rivals were not too far apart in terms of their own strength. Perhaps in the past years, relying on his family background, ability, and luck, Lucas had made his rivals suffer repeated setbacks in business. But after all, they were people from the same social circle as Lucas. Such people, like Lucas, were beyond Vivian's ability to provoke. The second type were Lucas's friends, but they were completely disappointed in Lucas's character and moral conduct because of my death. These people, just like the first type, although they might not have as much money and power as Lucas, they were still wealthy. Since they dared to scold Lucas, it proved that they had unilaterally broken off their friendship with him. The common point of these 2 types of people was that they were wealthy and not to be trifled with. Vivian's fans gradually began to be unsatisfied with just scolding me. They traced through the internet and dug out all the people who had cursed Vivian on moments, and carried out online violence against them one by one, using all kinds of vulgarities to insult their entire families and even their ancestors. Some even went so far as to directly Photoshop obituary photos for them, send wreaths, splash paint, and even pour urine. The online world was crazy, and when that madness seeped into the real world, it was unbearable for everyone. These people were completely enraged. They all spent a lot of money and used their connections to sort out the stories of Lucas and me over the years, as well as the story between Lucas and Vivian. They matched them with all kinds of complete documents and evidence and posted them all online together. Overnight, Lucas's image as a deep in love male god and Vivian's image as the first love goddess completely collapsed. In these articles and materials, it was revealed that Lucas and I got to know each other when we were young. The fact that he both helped me and carried out PUA on me was confirmed in various ways. On the surface, it seemed that I had been sticking to him since I was a child, but in reality, Lucas simply didn't allow anyone else to get close to me, except for Ava. Because she was a special case and Lucas had no way to deal with her. Since I was a child, I could only be his deskmate, and I could only eat and play with him. Whenever there were other children, whether male or female, approaching me, regardless of the reason, they would be violently driven away by him. He kept instilling in me the idea that only he would be good to me in the whole world. He kept telling me that I was unloved and didn't deserve to be loved by anyone, so I should stay by his side obediently. Because no one else wanted me except him. In high school, I had excellent grades, while Lucas's grades were average. In order to make me go to the same university as him, he put drugs in my water, which caused me to have diarrhea on the day of the college entrance examination and perform poorly. Of course, Lucas also gave up the option of studying abroad and instead stayed in the country to go to the same university as me. In fact, given his family background, which university he went to didn't really matter, because in the end, he was going to inherit the family business anyway. But he selfishly broke my wings, and after that he told me that he stayed in the country all for my sake. At that time, I was so touched that I really thought that perhaps he liked me too, otherwise, how could he have given up going abroad just to be with me? Now that I know the truth after my death, it's really sad and ridiculous. During college, he kept me hanging on, enjoying my dependence and love for him, while at the same time, he started dating Vivian. He played both sides and thought that I would never be able to escape his control. As for his breakup with Vivian, it wasn't because of me either. It was because Vivian pressured him to get married. He hesitated. Coincidentally, at that time, there was a rich second generation who was more powerful than Lucas pursuing her. The rich second generation invited her to go abroad together, and she readily agreed. Lucas was thus dumped. After that, Lucas drank to drown his sorrows and took the opportunity to have a relationship with me. My biggest mistake was not pushing Lucas away. After getting pregnant, it was Lucas who took the initiative to propose marriage. But after marriage, he didn't fulfill his responsibilities and obligations as a husband. He still had an on-again, off-again relationship with Vivian. Vivian was dumped abroad and then came back to find Lucas. In order to celebrate Vivian's birthday, Lucas left his wife, whose amniotic fluid had broken, on the highway. While he and Vivian were being affectionate with each other, I was hit by a large truck and was completely crushed. In the article, several tragic photos of the car accident scene were also attached. The shocking degree of these photos was almost enough to make everyone who saw them unable to fall asleep. These articles were frantically reposted. Thanks to the previous popularity of Vivian and the traffic bought with money, the situation was completely reversed at this point. Vivian was almost driven crazy. As elated as she had been before, she was now in extreme pain. All the fans who had once adored her turned against her and began to carry out online violence against her. In addition, there were a large number of passers-by who were indignant and also joined in the criticism. They didn't just scold her and curse her. They also dug up every single thing about Vivian from her childhood to adulthood. Every one of her relatives, every one of her best friends, every boyfriend she had ever dated, and every person she had been in an ambiguous relationship with. People are not perfect. Under the seemingly perfect appearance, there might be unimaginable filth hidden. Originally, her parents had a loving relationship. But netizens dug out that she wasn't actually her father's biological daughter. She was the product of her mother's affair with an old lover. Her parents divorced because of this, and her mother was even left with nothing. For this reason, her mother slapped her more than 30 times in a row, directly causing her eardrum to perforate. Most of her best friends were of similar character to her, being all kinds of scheming and two-faced. Each of them suffered different degrees of online violence. Some were broken up with, some were fired, and what's even worse, some who were about to successfully pass the civil service examination were implicated because of Vivian and had no chance at all. As for the 17 ex-boyfriends she had dated, each of them was a rich second generation. Relying on their wealth, these people had no shortage of dirty deeds. Originally, no one knew about them. But now the whole world knew. Even her various aunts and uncles, and even her deskmate from kindergarten were implicated. These people were all of Vivian's social connections. They chased and intercepted Vivian in various ways and resorted to all kinds of means to take revenge on her, turning Vivian into a complete outcast that everyone wanted to condemn and attack. In desperation, Vivian turned to Lucas again. However, at this moment, Lucas had already been sent to a mental hospital by his family. The cause of Lucas's illness was his inability to accept my death. The symptoms were mental confusion and cognitive disorientation. He forgot about my death and also forgot that he had signed on the body identification form. Even when Ava exposed his delusion to his face that day, it only made him sober up briefly. When he woke up the next morning, he was still searching for me all over the world. He drove back and forth on the highway, driving in the wrong direction several times. After the traffic police forcibly stopped him, he still struggled and refused to leave, insisting that his wife was still on the highway, that she was a pregnant woman, and that her amniotic fluid had broken and she was about to give birth. The police contacted Lucas's family, and his family sent him to a mental hospital. After examination, he was found to have severe bipolar disorder accompanied by mild disturbance of consciousness, and had a strong tendency to attack others and himself. He had to be compulsorily admitted to the hospital for treatment. But after he was hospitalized, except for Ava who visited him occasionally, no one in Lucas's family ever mentioned him again. Come to think of it, Lucas's background was somewhat similar to mine. His parents had a business marriage. After giving birth to him, they divorced and went their separate ways. Lucas was raised by his grandparents. But the Lucas family and the Vivian family had an agreement that no matter how many more children Lucas's father had, Lucas would be the only heir of the Lucas family. That's why Lucas had the capital to be arrogant and domineering since he was a child. But after he got a mental illness, everything changed. The Lucas family had a large business and property, and they couldn't possibly hand over the family business to a mentally ill person. Although Lucas's father had never remarried, he had 3 adult illegitimate children, all of whom were smart, well-behaved, and excellent. In the past, with Lucas suppressing them, these 3 illegitimate children were relatively obedient. Now that Lucas had fallen, they were more active than anyone else. Lucas's father didn't have much father-son affection for Lucas at all. Everything was just a choice based on the perspective of interests. As for the Vivian family side, his mother had already passed away. His grandmother used to love him very much. And his uncles were also willing to support him, which made the Lucas family not dare to have other thoughts. But since my death, his grandmother was completely disheartened by Lucas and no longer cared about him. Come to think of it, Vivian's grandmother originally liked me very much. And I also liked her. Her support was also very important for me to successfully marry Lucas. But Lucas didn't like it when I got close to his grandmother. I didn't understand why at first, but now I know it all. He lacked a sense of security, and he was both domineering and selfish. He didn't allow me to have any close relationships other than with him, not even with his grandmother. He wanted my world to have only him. Just as his world only had me. Every time Ava went to visit him, she would show him the photos of the car accident scene. She would tell him over and over again, "Your wife is already dead. You left your wife on the highway, and she was hit and killed by a car. She bled so much. Do you think she was in pain? Was the baby in her belly in pain?" Every time she managed to shatter the illusion Lucas had woven. After being forced to wake up, Lucas would fall into extreme self-blame and pain. He would roar wildly, cry bitterly, and hurt himself, and then he would be injected with a sedative, and the dosage would keep increasing. After waking up from sleep, he would return to the illusion he had woven, constantly shouting that he wanted to go out to find his wife, because his wife was about to give birth. When Vivian arrived at the hospital, she saw Lucas in such a half-dead state. "Lucas, how could you have become like this? Do you still recognize me?" Lucas had just taken his medicine at this moment and was in a sluggish state, but he recognized her. "Vivian." Vivian nodded frantically and then threw herself into his arms with tears in her eyes, pouring out her grievances during this period. Lucas. Get better soon. While you're not around, they've all been bullying me." Lucas listened with empty eyes, but it seemed as if he wasn't really listening, just immersed in his own world. Perhaps she had suppressed too much fear and anger in her heart during this period. Vivian was so angry that she didn't care that he was a patient and directly shouted, "How long are you going to keep lying to yourself? Evelyn is already dead. She's dead. Can you please wake up? She deserved to die. She interfered in our love. She schemed to get pregnant with your child. She was asking for death. You're not at fault. I'm not at fault. It's Evelyn who's at fault. She deserved to die. She should have died a long time ago." Perhaps it was her continuous mention of death that stimulated Lucas. Lucas's eyes were no longer glazed, but what gathered in his eyes was maniacal hatred and anger. He grabbed Vivian's neck with astonishing strength, as if he wanted to strangle Vivian to death right there. "It's you. You killed her. If you hadn't called me, I wouldn't have left her behind. And she wouldn't have been hit and killed by a car. Evelyn didn't deserve to die. It's you who deserves to die, you bitch." Vivian was truly scared at this moment. Lucas was a mentally ill person now. Even if he really killed her, he wouldn't have to bear any legal responsibility. If the nurse hadn't rushed in and injected him with a sedative at the last moment, Vivian might truly have been strangled to death on the spot. She was so frightened that she narrowly escaped death and fled the hospital in a hurry. But because she was too flustered, she didn't even look at the traffic lights and was directly hit and sent flying by a large vehicle. Fortunately, although she was seriously injured, she didn't die. Unfortunately, although she didn't die, she had multiple comminuted fractures on her face. Even if she had plastic surgery, she would still have serious sequelae. The beauty she was most proud of was completely gone. After Vivian's car accident, the matter finally came to an end. Ava never came to visit Lucas again. The names of the three of us gradually faded from the public eye. My soul began to gradually dissipate. I knew that the day when I would leave completely wasn't far away. A year later, Lucas's condition gradually stabilized. He finally seemed to be able to accept the fact that he had caused my death. The medical staff also unanimously believed that he had recovered quite well. In another 2 years, he should be able to be discharged from the hospital and go home. Later, he really was discharged from the hospital. However, neither the Lucas family nor the Vivian family had a place for him anymore. On the first night of living on the streets, he cut off his own tongue with a knife and poked out his own eyes. That night was the last night my soul remained in the human world. I entered his dream. In the dream, I asked him why he had done that. He said, "By cutting off my tongue, I can never say anything that will hurt you again. By poking out my eyes, I will never be confused by appearances and fail to understand my own heart." I asked again, "Then why don't you just die?" He said, "You probably don't want to see me." so I can't die yet. I have to live on with all my sins and in great pain until the moment my life ends and I fall into hell. I asked the last question. At that time, why did you do that? Why did you kick me out of the car? He said, I've asked myself this question countless times. It was precisely because I couldn't figure it out and couldn't accept it that I became crazier and crazier. But one day later, I finally understood. Perhaps it was because of the evil in my heart. This evil includes my selfishness and inferiority complex. I needed to constantly trample on you and hurt you to confirm your love for me. I thought that you would always endure me and never leave me. But I was completely wrong. At the last moment when the dream dissipated, he said to me, Evelyn, go never forgive me. Never meet me again. If there is an afterlife, remember to love yourself well. When the dream ended, my soul completely dissipated. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back in the year when I was 5 years old. I met Lucas, who is 6 years old, again. The difference was that when he offered me candy again, I pushed him away. In this life, I no longer need anyone's pity or charity. And I will no longer beg for anyone's love. Because I know that no matter what, there will be someone who loves me well, and that person is myself. When my grandparents didn't give me food, I would go out to collect cardboard boxes and garbage. Sell them for some change, and use the money to buy food. When my grandparents wanted to hit me, I would run around crying and shouting, letting all the neighbors know about their evil deeds of abusing me. But I wouldn't let them touch a single hair on my head. When some bad kids bullied me, I would fight back and bite them desperately until I completely intimidated them and made them submit. I made them call me big sister whenever they saw me, and then I would order them to help me collect garbage. Later, I took the initiative to find the aunt who worked in the community and explained my difficult situation to her. After the aunt from the community investigated, she found that I was really pitiful and that I was often beaten, scolded, and abused by my grandparents. The community helped me contact the Women's Federation. The aunts from the 2 units visited my home together and exerted moral pressure on my grandparents. These 2 old people cared about face. In front of them, they repeatedly promised that they would never abuse me again. At the same time, the staff of the Women's Federation also managed to contact my biological parents, who had long since disappeared without a trace. According to the law, they demanded that my biological parents must pay me alimony every month or they would be sued. Under the combined pressure of reason and law, I received more alimony payments every month. It wasn't a large amount, just 2,000 yuan, but it was enough to ensure my food and clothing. Relying on my sweet mouth despite my young age, I was very likable to Amelia from the Women's Federation. So Amelia never forgot about me. She would make regular return visits, visits. Check the accounts, and see if my grandparents were spending the alimony that belonged to me on me. It was precisely because of Amelia's deterrence that my grandparents, who had little knowledge and were overly concerned about face, didn't dare to continue abusing me and honestly spent the money on me. But I wasn't satisfied with that. Relying on my experience and knowledge from my previous life, I began to write various children's short stories. I asked Amelia to help me submit my works to major children's literature magazines. Amelia was pleasantly surprised by my talent. She had her own connections and channels. Soon, the stories I wrote appeared on the pages of major children's literature magazines. And my manuscript fees also increased from the initial 20 yuan per article to 200 yuan and then to 1,000 yuan. At the age of 12, a publishing house compiled and published 100 fairy tales I had written, titled The Lost Little Moon. It was precisely with this book that I received a royalty of 2 million yuan. My fame grew larger and larger. The school began to arrange for me to participate in various speeches, interviews for youth activities, and TV variety shows. At the age of 15, I had already become a nationally renowned young writer. My scumbag father and mother, who had always left me behind, started to fight for my custody. So I simply wrote an autobiography about how they abandoned me and how my grandparents abused me, and I serialized it simultaneously in major magazines and websites. I gained a large amount of sympathy and popularity, and my royalty income doubled again. My scumbag father and mother came to my door, wanting to beat and scold me, but I had hidden cameras that recorded everything they did. When the video was posted online, they completely lost their reputation and became the objects of public condemnation. From then on, they finally disappeared completely from my world. At the age of 17, with excellent college entrance examination results, I was finally admitted to my dream top university, a well-known prestigious university in the country. I became a high-quality idol in the eyes of countless students and parents. At the age of 20, I founded a film and television company together with several classmates. At the age of 22, I invested in an internet e-commerce company founded by several classmates. At the age of 25, I caught the wave of the short video industry, and my net worth exceeded 10 billion yuan. A reporter interviewed me and asked me what the secret to my success was. I replied, "Love myself well." The reporter then asked, "It is said that there are all kinds of elite suitors around you, but it seems that you have never been in a relationship. Can you tell us the reason? Maybe it's just that fate hasn't arrived yet." The reporter asked, "Then what is your ideal type like?" I smiled and said it should probably be someone like myself.